Hello, I'm Felicity Cohen. I'm so excited to introduce you to my Wellness Warriors podcast. For over 20 years, I've been a passionate advocate for helping thousands of Australians find solutions to treating obesity and health-related complications through surgical intervention and holistic managed care. My podcast is dedicated to all the people, past, present and future, who have helped shape my journey and continue to inspire me to work consistently to achieve a healthier Australia in both adults and future generations. I hope you enjoy it.
Good morning, Melo Calarco. Thank you so much for joining me on my Wellness Warriors podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today, and I appreciate you taking the time out. Sounds like you've had a really hectic week.
Yes, I have. It's been the Mental Health Awareness Week or month that it's continuing on. But thank you for having me. Nice to meet you, and nice to meet everybody out there. Been a big week, but I'm coming to the end of it now. It's Friday, so I can recharge and renew my energy.
You work in a really fascinating space, being a mindfulness coach, a high performance coach, and in working in this whole area of mindfulness. I think that we've seen a really huge shift, not just over the last few years, but specifically in the last 12 months. And one of the things that I really feel that I'm aware of is that with something like a month that's dedicated to focusing on our mental health, that I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think that this is something that we're focusing on so much more, that we're so much more heightened around what does this look like, what does this mean, and why are we so much more in tune with mental health and why we need to actually examine that more closely.
I think there's always been some quite good initiatives here in Australia. We're quite good with mental health and reducing the stigma with companies like Beyond Blue and Black Dog Institute and many other great organisations doing it. But I think right now people are actually feeling it, like actually experiencing mental health themselves. Even people that have been busy. What I normally see in my coaching work, I've been coaching for over 25 years, I normally meet people in the chronic stress zone where they're just overwhelmed, overstimulated, can't sleep at night, especially when I'm working with executives, CEOs of companies. And now that we've actually shifted the dial a little bit with the pandemic, the ongoing impact of the lockdowns, people are starting to feel more on the burnout side of things. Fatigue. So the difference that I see in the mental health is usually it's like too much, and now it's like I'm done, I'm tired, I can't keep doing this anymore, I need some help, I'm exhausted. So it's a very different mental health feeling right now. So people are reaching out more, and some of the seminars that I do, there's 500, 600, even 1,000 people on them. So people are dialing in to look after their mental health, which is great.
I'd love to learn more about that, but before we dive into that space, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you and how you actually ended up in this area of work that is so important. 25 years you've spent as a mindfulness coach and as a high performance coach. What took you into this area of work, and how did you get to where you're at today?
It's a good question, and it's a bit of an evolution in progress, to be honest. It's been an organic journey for me. So many years ago, around 30 odd years ago, I entered meditation through martial arts, actually. So I found meditation, and I was in a period of my life where I was a little bit lost and working in all sorts of jobs that weren't satisfying me, just to make money and pay rent and all those sort of things. And then I found martial arts, and I entered meditation through there, and I very quickly realized that the power and the strength of the mind was as important, if not more important, than the power and strength of the body. So that led me on a 3-decade journey of self-discovery and immersing myself in the spiritual aspects of meditation. And then I actually cycled around the world on my mountain bike, as you do. And I lived in monasteries and temples and immersed myself quite deep in the practices. And so that really was the catalyst for me to discover that the power of meditation and the power of actually learning some of these skills and being able to still the mind and to stay calm under pressure. And then that evolved into a whole, through my career, at the beginning I was working more with physical therapy. So I was working in mental health clinics, delivering programs around movement-based therapies and incorporating things like Tai Chi and mindfulness in that. then that slowly kept evolving, and now I'm working in the corporate sector, teaching mindfulness techniques for performance, for productivity, for stress resilience. Right now, obviously for mental health, and it's been a constant evolution in progress, and I love what I do every single day. I'm working with a variety of clients, from corporate CEOs to Olympic athletes to mental health clients to the whole range there, which it drives me and motivates me every day when I'm working with this. And it's been a natural evolution, and it's still evolving, to be honest. It's still evolving as I work, and I like to just follow that path and share my knowledge and experience with mindfulness with whoever I can share it with. My mission is to share it with as many people as possible on this planet so they can benefit.
The key thing there for me is loving what you do every day. And I think, if you do love what you do, it does drive you and gives you that motivation to excel. So I share that with you in what I do every day. I think it's so important to have that passion and to wake up and feel excited about what you're doing and the work that you get to do and to share with others. Cycling around the world. What possessed you to get on a bike and actually ride around the world? How long did that take you?
It took a few years. So I had actually 6 buddies of mine plan this cycling trip around the world, and we sat around the table and we planned all these off-road routes around Africa and India and Asia and America. But unfortunately, one by one, my 6 buddies dropped out on me as we started planning the journey. It was like, this is too dangerous, Melo. I'm not sure if I can do this. So it turned into be a solo adventure. And I'm glad it did, because then I met people along the way, and it wouldn't have been the same with other people. And to be honest, I was never alone anyway, because I was always meeting other people and communities and loving it. So I just wanted to do something and just challenge myself and put myself out there and learn from other cultures and being other parts of the world. And it was a life-changing experience, from near-death experiences to learning about other Indigenous cultures, and most of the time I was living and staying with Indigenous cultures, so learning some of their deep spiritual aspects and just learning from those communities. So an amazing experience. There is a book to come. I'm now in the pipeline of putting a book together there, but if you ask me, that's where I learned my lessons on mindfulness and resilience and all these things. I mean, I do have a piece of paper that says I'm a mindfulness facilitator from the university, but I learned my lessons on resilience, on trust, on these lessons that you learn on the road. So, and when I do run seminars and workshops, a lot of these stories come out. So it's very experiential and a bit different to just learning the facts and the figures and the data. It's coming from experience. So yeah, I love it. So it did possess me, and I'm so glad I did, because it changed my life, and it also compounds and helps other people around the world.
I can only imagine the mental resilience that goes with being in your own headspace, being alone for such a considerable amount of time when you're not in communities and sharing and being with other people, just cycling for hours on end alone. You're in your own headspace, so you can only deal with your own thoughts. Tell me about one of the near-death experiences. What was that like, and how did that happen?
Oh, there's a few of them, to be honest. But what I did learn along the way, while cycling solo, obviously it's dangerous. Some of those countries are very dangerous, and border crossings are very dangerous. What I did learn, and you hit the nail on the head, you can get caught up in your thoughts and start thinking about what if scenarios, what if this happens, what if that happens. But when you practice mindfulness and meditation, you learn to be present with what is happening. What I did learn is trusting that you always have the resources inside of you, no matter what. No matter how difficult the situation. Some of those border crossings are very corrupt, and they want all your money and jewelry and everything to get across the borders, but always trusting that you have the resources inside of you. So I just encountered them along the way. One particular one I'll share with you was actually in Rwanda, where I was traveling the back roads of Rwanda, and actually I put my bike up for a while, and I was traveling on the back of trucks. So basically on the back roads of Rwanda, what you do to get around is you just jump on the back of these trucks, and everybody just keeps jumping on. It's a bit like a little Uber taxi system there, that you just pay a few pennies and you do that. And on one particular occasion, I jumped on the back of this truck. I was coming back from somewhere with a few other people, and unfortunately at the time the Congolese president was assassinated. So there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of political unrest, there was shootings and deaths around the area. So it wasn't the best timing to start with. But this particular truck that I was traveling on, the people that were jumping on, a lot of them were soldiers, and a lot of them were young soldiers, and I could tell when they jumped on, they were a bit angry and a bit drunk. I could smell alcohol on their breath, and I thought, oh, this is not the right place at the right time. And one of the soldiers decided to humiliate me a little bit, and he poked a machine gun into my ribs and was like playing with me. And I thought, okay, fight or flight. Here's the typical fight and flight response. Do I jump off the truck and run? He'd probably shoot me or humiliate me or capture me, or do I turn around and fight? And even though I'm a martial artist, I don't think that's going to help against the machine gun. So in that moment, I turned back to my mindfulness practices and I thought, I'm going to take 3 breaths. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to take 3 breaths. So I took these 3 breaths, which seemed like forever. I took 3 deep breaths. By the time I got to the 3rd breath, I got the answer. I thought, you know what? I knew through my travels that sense of humor goes a long way and patience goes a long way. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? A bit of sense of humor. Let's make fun out of this situation. So I started playing rock, paper, scissors with one of the soldiers in front of me, just sort of good old rock, paper, scissors. And it was kind of fun. And he started laughing. And then the other guy on the other side started, playing with it. And before I knew it, the whole truck was playing rock, paper, scissors with me, and we're having lots of fun. And then I noticed the machine gun come out of my ribs, and he released it. I thought, okay, that's a good sign. So I kept playing. And then I noticed a tap on the shoulder, and I turned around, and the guy that was poking me in the ribs with the machine gun. And by the way, the machine gun had sticky tape around it and all this very old primal piece of equipment. And he said, he gestured to me, can I play? Can I play? So the whole situation turned around. So I started playing rock, paper, scissors. And I learned then that obviously a sense of humor is a big thing, but just creating that space. So instead of reacting, so the mindfulness practice and the meditation practice taught me to create space between stimulus and response. So instead of being reactive, I just took 3 mindful breaths, which, by the way, seemed like it lasted forever, but 3 mindful breaths, and then turned around and responded. And that's just one situation, and there's been many others where I've turned inwards. Like instead of, sometimes the world around you is chaotic. I've been in riots in Nepal when the president was assassinated there, the king was assassinated there, but I've always turned inwards then to seek the answer outwards instead of getting caught up in the external stimuli, which is a good analogy for now too, with what's going on. There's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of disorder going on around us, media and pandemic exposure, but trusting that you always have the resources inside of you as those moments unfold is a great tool to learn.
And an incredible lesson for all of us. And I think how incredible to use humour and to use a simple game like that to connect, to communicate, and to completely break down a situation that could have been fatally moved in a completely different direction for you. But the converse outcome is that you've completely translated that into not just a positive outcome for you, but you've communicated something new for all of those people on that truck. And they've learned something from you that day as well, which is kind of pretty amazing how you've completely flipped that scenario on its head 100%. I think that's just incredible. And I love the idea that, when you are faced with some kind of adversity, not just the inwards and breath work, but also using a sense of humour and trying to find other mechanisms to completely change a situation.
Yeah, by the end of it, when I jumped off the truck, they were all giving me high fives and hey, bye, well done, bye. It was turned into a beautiful situation by the end. So it could have been the total opposite. So yeah, exactly. And I learned sense of humor is a big one in a lot of those situations. People turn toward that sense of humor to change the actual heaviness of it. So definitely a lesson I learned.
Amazing. What are some of the lessons that you've learned personally through the work that you're doing throughout this lockdown phase? I know that you live in Victoria. Which part of Victoria are you in, Melo?
Just moved now to Mount Martha, which is on the Mornington Peninsula, which is lovely. Really, really enjoying it in the last 2 weeks actually. So loving it out here, a bit of greenery around, beautiful beach up the road, and nice community. So yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons, definitely. And one thing I will say that I've learned by coaching and supporting so many people I was mentioning before, that just in the last 18 months alone, I've reached out and spoken to and supported over 60,000 people through this pandemic in various companies. And sometimes I'm speaking to Asia, all around the world, Australia, different situations. What I have learned is make sure that I look after me. Make sure I ask myself this question every single day. And this is when it comes to mental health. What have I done for me today? What have I done that fills up my own cup? What have I done that energizes me? So my self-care practices are in the morning, first thing in the morning, get up, get out in the sunlight, get the serotonin levels into me, get the exercise going, and then I do a meditation practice, about 20 odd minutes, sometimes Tai Chi or martial arts, and then I have a healthy breakfast. So that's 3 wins before the day's even started, which is just for me, so then I can support other people. So that's one thing, and that's one thing I do teach, like make sure that people are looking after themselves, because in this stressful situation when we can be bombarded by external stimuli all the time, often the things we need the most are the things that slip. I won't exercise today, I'm too busy. I'll skip lunch today, I've got too much going on, or I'll just eat in front of the computer. And that's the things that we need the most. So definitely that's what I've learned, because I don't think I could do what I do. And some days, like this week alone, I've run 18 seminars and pretty much back to back. I don't think I could do what I do without those self-care practices to make sure that I'm looking after me every single day.
That's vital, and I feel that there's been a big shift in our understanding that self-care is not self-indulgence, that it's good balance, it's management, and it's giving yourself the opportunity to actually achieve. And in your area of teaching people all about high performance, if you're not filling your own cup, how do you actually give yourself the opportunity to successfully empower others? Because you actually can't. So if you're lacking in sleep, if you're lacking in nutrition, exercise, all of the fundamentals, it is really, really difficult to achieve. I think it's really interesting, around about 2007, when the GFC hit, mindfulness and corporate wellness programs were probably one of the first things that were eliminated due to budgetary constraints. Now we're faced with a situation where we've seen this massive increase due to the pandemic, due to mental health issues, and a heightened awareness around the fact that we've got to look after people's mental health. What do you think is currently the status of how people perceive the need, and especially in a health and wellbeing space, is this mindfulness practice becoming more mainstream?
Yes and no. It's a really interesting question, because when we get buy-in from companies at leadership level, when the leaders are buying into the concept of well-being and mindfulness and looking after their people, it filters really well down the organization and everybody's on board on the same page. And I see that the most successful programs I run is when I run a leadership program first, and teaching emotional intelligence and self-awareness and things like that, and then that'll filter down. But a lot of companies do a bit of a token effort towards it, and it's just like, okay, we've got to do something for our people, and they just throw out a quick little class here and there, and it doesn't get the sustainable change, to be honest. So it is becoming more, it's more a necessity now. Necessity is the mother of invention. So people are really seeing that their people are struggling. So that's where mindfulness techniques and things are actually working really well. But unfortunately, we don't always get the right people on board. And I see that in the work that I do. Often HRs and directors are running these programs, and the people that we want in the programs are the people that don't come to them. Because I'm too busy, I've got too much going on, I haven't got time to sit in a mindfulness class and learn these skills. But the skills that I teach, to be honest, they will help you for the rest of your life. I often get people years later, so I might run a program or a lunch and learn in a company, and then I'll get someone years later say, "Oh, Melo, you did that session with us at XYZ company. I've got to tell you, you actually saved my life. You actually saved my marriage." And the skills that I teach in these sessions, they get translated and they take them home, and then they obviously help them. So I think we're still in a bit of a limbo state with that, to be honest. There's some companies that are doing great things where they roll out like 12-month programs. So there's not just a touch point, meditation class or yoga class or something, just a bit of a token effort. There's ones that have the consistent touch points that will get the sustainable change. And mindfulness is now, Harvard Business Review say that mindfulness should no longer be considered a nice to have, it's a must have. And I really like that. That sort of summarizes it. So yeah, people are taking it on board. And what I typically do in the companies that I work with is, first of all, break the skepticism and break the. I usually don't use the word meditation in the first few sessions, to be honest, because people have these preconceptions that meditation is all about candles and incense and dreadlocks or whatever it is. So I need to break that first. And when I can break that skepticism and talk about the performance, the productivity, and I usually use words like, let's go train our attention, or let's go refocus, or let's go reset, instead of saying, let's go meditate, because people have those preconceptions. So, but yeah, getting back to the question there, mindfulness is becoming a lot more popularized, but I still think there's a way to go.
Great, thank you so much. I know that for me, I've introduced a Monday morning meditation, and I think that I can see the difference in the response within my team. Those who are here, they're always welcome to show up, but they've reported to me that they do notice a difference in their own productivity when they attend that session on a Monday morning. So I'm a great advocate for it and love it for myself as well. I noticed that you're actually doing a lot of work in the health space, in health clinics, in health retreats. Tell me about how these environments are embracing mindfulness more, and why in that specific health space and not just the corporate sector is this such an important part of your work?
Yeah, it's just teaching the fundamentals, to be honest. So, people need space. People need to go somewhere to actually sometimes get away from their day-to-day busyness. So I work in mental health clinics also, as I said, and I know that's unfortunately they've tipped over the other edge of the mental health spectrum and coming to seek help, but also sometimes just separating yourself from your day-to-day business and going on a health retreat or going to a clinic or going somewhere. It's just enough to just reset the mind and reset that mind. So very important sometimes just to step back, step out of that busy treadmill of life and look after yourself. But I also encourage people to do that on a daily basis. Once they learn some of these skills, they might come to a clinic or they might come to a retreat. They learn these skills, then I encourage them to do them daily. So even if it's I teach a 90-second breath break, for example, just 90 seconds. And I say to them, if you stop for 90 seconds in your busy day at work, when you're feeling a bit scattered, you've got too many windows open on your computer and you're not sure what you're focusing on, stop, pause, 90 seconds of breathing, can just reset your focus, and then your next 2 hours will be more productive. So teaching these people in that environment, getting them out of that busyness is first of all a start, but then giving them practices that they can sustain for the rest of their life. Realize they don't have to wait to the end of the year to go on a health retreat to recharge their batteries. They can actually renew their energy on a daily/hourly basis and punctuate your day with 10 minutes of meditation, or even just sitting outside and having a cup of tea, sitting on a bench, just having some downtime. These skills are really important. So, and unfortunately in this world right now, the live environment is, retreats and things are hit and miss or not allowed right now. So we translate some of them virtually, which is a challenge, but it still helps just to step back and do these things.
What have you learned about how you are working with people in that virtual environment, and how has it not only impacted your work and the ability to connect with people? It sounds like you're busier than ever. What are some of the things that you've noticed that have been different or changed for you in this space?
There's pros and cons to it. At first I thought I'll never be able to translate what I do live in the room into the virtual world, because in the room I'm quite dynamic and I move around a lot and get people up and moving, and so I never thought I'd be able to do that, translate that virtually. But somehow I have, and somehow people say that, wow, it doesn't feel like a virtual session. It feels like you're here with us. And sometimes, like I said, I could be speaking to 50 people or 100 people or 600 people. But one of the biggest benefits of it is we can reach more people. And I can be across the world in this room that I'm sitting in right now and be speaking to more people and impacting more lives. So, but what I try to do through the sessions when I am teaching virtually is ask people first of all to turn off all their other buzzers and beepers and notifications and the things that will distract them. Because unfortunately, when people are learning virtually, they might get a pop-up and then they start emailing and then they're not in the zone anymore of learning and taking in the session. So I ask them to do that. And I also ask them to interact as much as possible. So it's been a really good win for me in the long run, because I can run 4 or 5 seminars in one day and reach thousands of people, which I couldn't do in the real world. I couldn't be in Victoria and then in Kuala Lumpur and then in Indonesia or somewhere else all in one day. So it's a good thing. I hope in the future there'll be a hybrid version. There's some sort of way that I can do both of these and still reach people globally, but also do some local work here in Victoria or in Australia.
What are some of the techniques that you use in your own teachings of mindfulness? Because I think you use movement and your approach is quite unique and different in itself. Can you tell me a little bit about how you actually practice and what is it that you do that's different?
Yeah, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all when it comes to meditation. If I say the word meditation, it's like saying the word sport. There's thousands of different sports, right? So I see what works the best for clients. So, for example, the high anxiety client that's really like highly anxious and nervous and even physically shaking and shivering, it's pretty difficult to ask them just to sit and follow your breath. So you get adverse effects quite commonly, because more things will pop up when you ask them to stop. So with someone like that, I'd get them to do some movement first. It might be some walking, and then we stop and we do some physical movement where the hands or the movement, like Qigong or Tai Chi type things, they actually guide the breath. So we can do movements what it does, it actually modulates your brain, and the movements guide the breath. Then once they do that for a while, they're happier to sit. So someone highly anxious, that would be that sort of model. I try to keep it as simple as possible, to be honest. Mindfulness and meditation can be sometimes overcomplicated, and I try to just keep it as simple as possible and use typically breath as an anchor or various different breath techniques to do that. So someone that has depression, for example, they need a bit more lifting up. They need a bit more energizing. So I'll teach them a breathing technique that energizes them and gives them more energy and clarity. Someone that's highly anxious, it'll be the opposite, to suppress them and to calm them and get the hormones going, the chemicals going, so they can actually calm down. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And even for myself, to be honest, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some days I need more energizing, so I'll do a practice that actually energizes me and lifts me up. At the end of the day, I might need something that grounds me, brings me down. So keep it as simple as possible. And I also take the practice off the mat, so to speak. So when it comes to mindfulness, there's the formal practice where you stop, you close your eyes, you do the practice, whether that's 2 minutes or 20 minutes, it doesn't matter, but that's the formal practice. But there's also the non-formal practice, and that's like doing all the things that you do in your life, but you do them more mindfully. Like eating, obviously you're in the nutrition space there, eating away from the computer, tasting the flavors, smelling the aromas, engaging with the food. Even when you're showering, like, enjoying the water on your head, and enjoying the smell of your shampoo and all those sort of things. So taking the practices off of the mat, and even though they sound simple, but they're very powerful. Because often we get caught up in our thoughts and our mind, and research says that 47% of the time our mind is elsewhere, it's off task. So when we train ourselves with mindfulness techniques to be more present in what you're doing, then you can actually enjoy what you're doing more. I'll tell you a quick story in one of the monasteries that I was staying at in Vietnam. Yeah. And it wasn't a silent retreat. It was more like you could speak a little bit. There was a mindfulness place there. And each day when you did your things that you did, your daily chores, like for example, when you were chopping the vegetables, you weren't allowed to talk about anything else except for the vegetables. So, oh wow, look at the color of my carrot today, it's so nice. And you really enjoy that. And then when you were eating, you couldn't talk about the weather or something else. You could talk about the food and the smells and the aromas and the tastes and the flavors. And then even when you're washing the dishes, for example, you couldn't talk about anything. If you wanted to talk at all, you had to talk about what you were doing. Oh wow, the water temperature on my hands is just right, or I'm enjoying this process. And what it did, at first it was really difficult, like really being present with all these things for the day. But what it taught me was to enjoy every single moment of every single day. And even I remember later on when I was up in the high Himalaya and camping and trekking and camping in a tent, it was minus X degrees. I think it was minus 20 degrees up there. And I remember it was my turn to wash the dishes. and we boiled the kettle and washed the dishes. Oh my God, what a beautiful experience this is, washing the dishes and feeling the temperature on my hands. I actually volunteered every night after that to wash the dishes because it was such a pleasant experience. So mindfulness is not only just closing your eyes and doing those practices, it's also translated in everything that you do. Mindful thinking, showering, brushing your teeth.
I actually love that that was not a completely silent retreat, because the thought for me of actually going and doing a silent meditation retreat sounds so incredibly frightening. But if I could go to something that maybe you could speak a little bit, even if it's about the colour of the vegetables, I could probably do that.
Exactly. And when I left there, by the way, we got this little 4-page booklet on mindfulness. There's like these little Buddhist scriptures, and you know what? That just summarized to me what it was. Really simple, 4 pages of photocopied thing saying when you're doing the dishes, just do the dishes. When you are walking the dog, just walk the dog. And then I came back to Australia about 4 or 5 years later, and I was working in one of the psychiatric clinics that I work in, and the head psychiatrist just finished publishing her book on mindfulness and depression and anxiety. And you know what? When I read the book, I mean, it was a brilliant book and it was well written and well researched, but it actually almost overcomplicated what simple practice is. And I much prefer my little 4-page booklet and then there's like 55 chapters on what mindfulness is. Sometimes it can get too confusing and we don't do the practice. Whereas just thinking, stopping, pausing, breathing, enjoying those things you do in your day more, our mindfulness training at its best. And the simplicity of it. And that's my job as a facilitator, is make the complex simple. Take the complexity out of it and make it as simple as possible so everybody in the room can go home and start the practices.
That's fantastic. And I love the simplicity factor, and that it's approachable, that it's actually something that's tangible and that people can employ in their own practice on a daily basis. I think that's so important. Can you tell me, Melo, about a couple of really big wins for you? If you could think about one individual case where you really feel like you've transformed, or you're aware and you know that you've transformed someone's life, what has that looked like? And then also in a more corporate, larger scale environment, 2 major kind of changes that you've been able to impact. I'm really fascinated to hear a bit about those.
For me, to be honest, it's actually the little wins that are the biggest ones for me. So I know that when I go into corporate companies, I run 6-week programs, and I know that most people in the group will take away these practices and they'll transform the way they work, how productive they are, and I get great feedback afterwards. And I think fantastic. I've actually helped that person to work differently, to think differently, to adopt some of these practices. But to be honest, when I hear some of these smaller things, like I mentioned before, someone comes up to me and says, "Oh my God, Melo, that thing that you taught me there, it saved my marriage. It saved my life." I think, wow, that's the ripple effects that's having. There was one particular case, if you want, one particular one where I was having a swim at the local Brighton bars where I was swimming, and I came out of the water and I was jumping into the steam room, and one fella came up to me and says, "Melo, are you Melo?" I said, yeah, that's me. He says, "Again, I've got to tell you that actually you came to my company." It was one of the major banks. "You came to my company and you did this 4-week program, and shortly afterwards I got diagnosed with cancer, and he had prostate cancer, very aggressive prostate cancer." He said, "Those skills that you taught me in that session really helped me through the breathing techniques, the mindfulness techniques, the mindset techniques, because I also teach about how to manage your thoughts and thought processes." And he said, "It saved my life. Honestly, I don't think I could have got through the treatment. It was quite aggressive treatment that he had to go through. And he goes, I don't think I could have got through without those tools and techniques." And on that note, there's another case that comes to mind where I was working with another cancer patient who actually had throat cancer, very aggressive throat cancer. And I worked with him through his 49 days of aggressive treatment. And every day I was with him and taking him through these mindfulness practices and also some movement practices and helping him through his mindset. And his oncologist actually said to him, "I've never seen anybody in my 45 years of oncology working with cancer come out with such a positive mindset and even physically, like it actually manifested physically, where he ate all the way through. They said to him, by week 2, you're probably going to be having smoothies. By week 3, your throat's going to be so full. so sore that you're not going to be enjoying life anymore by week 5. So they painted this sort of doomsday message for him, just to give him the worst case scenario. But he worked all the way through. He ate all the way through. He did everything just by teaching him these mindfulness techniques. So they're 2 big wins there that I think they're good heartfelt stories.
Oh, they're incredible. I don't call those small wins at all. They are just amazing, and it just shows and demonstrates the absolute power of mindfulness and how it can be transforming someone's life. That's incredible. Congratulations. I know that one of your other major motivations in life is your family, and I believe you've got 2 daughters.
Yeah, well done. You did some research. Yeah, 2 beautiful daughters, Malika and Milani. Now 12 and 10 suddenly, 12 and 9, so time goes fast. Yeah, they're definitely a big part of my life and what I share, and share some of these practices with them too, of course, and to enjoy life and to live through their eyes, because children are naturally curious, aren't they? Children are naturally mindful. If you want to look for a mindfulness master, just look at your children, because they enjoy every moment. They enjoy everything with curiosity and open awareness and wonder. So yeah, definitely live through them.
Beautiful. If you could give us one tip on how to succeed in a high performance environment employing or using one technique of mindfulness, what would that be? What would be your top tip?
I think the biggest one is to punctuate your day with renewal breaks. So instead of trying to just charge through, and when it comes to high performers, the best high performers that I know and the ones that I work with and high achievers, including, like I said, Olympic athletes that I'm working with at the moment, is they have healthy rituals. So they have healthy morning rituals, healthy midday rituals, and closing the day rituals. So I say to punctuate your day with renewal breaks. Start the day well, of course, with all those good self-care practices, but throughout the day, instead of just charging through with more caffeine and energy and sugar just to keep you going and stimulants, stop, pause, renew your energy, do the next couple of hours of hard work, then again, stop, pause, renew your energy. Because if you stop for 2 minutes or 5 minutes, like I said, your next 2 hours will be more productive. But a lot of people I know in the fast-moving, high-performing world, they either wait to the end of the year to have that big holiday and recharge their energy, and they just keep working crazy, and then they usually crash on that end. They usually get sick on their holiday because their nervous system is just shot, or they wait to the end of the week. I'll relax on the weekend, I'll renew my energy on the weekend, I'll just work 70 hours and just keep going. And I work with a lot of surgeons also. I coach a lot of surgeons that do big weeks. So I teach them to actually renew their energy daily. So renew their energy even when they're washing their hands between patients, do some breathing techniques so they can actually renew their energy. So the shortest answer to that is to punctuate your day with renewal breaks every day. Don't wait to the end of the week or the end of the day or the end of the year. And that way there we can thrive and survive with no matter what life throws at us.
Thank you. You've taught me something, because I think I'm probably one of the guilty ones who waits to the weekend, and I'm actually going to really think about that and take it on board for myself, but also for the surgeons who I work with and all of my allied health team. I'm going to actually go and share that with them after our conversation, because it's so important. I've got one last question for you, but before I get to it, I've also got a tip for you. Mount Martha is a beautiful part of the world, and I know that you can catch some amazing flathead out there. So maybe if you're into fishing, you could incorporate fishing for flathead off the beach in Mount Martha. You need a little tinny or a boat if you haven't already got one. Great fishing spot. I had an uncle who spent so much time at Mount Martha, the best flathead I've ever had. So maybe get into the fishing down at Mount Martha and enjoy your lifestyle down there. I'm a great fan of the Mornington Peninsula. It's spectacular.
Thank you.
And finally, one question that I love to ask all of the guests on my Wellness Warriors podcast is, Melo, what does wellness mean to you?
Oh, well, that's a big question to end with. So the first thing that comes to mind is more like the holistic nature of that. So there's obviously mental wellness, there's physical wellness, there's financial wellness, and all those pillars of health. So that's sort of the generic answer. But personally, what wellness or well-being means to me is I can go to bed at night and put my head on the pillow and fall asleep and stay asleep all the way through, knowing that I've looked after my own wellness as much as possible through the day, but also knowing that I've helped and supported people and have that sense of achievement and fulfillment, and knowing that I'm helping people, and I know I can go to bed with a clear conscience, that to me is wellness. Going to bed and staying asleep and falling asleep and staying asleep, that to me is the ultimate sign of well-being.
Melo, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here on my Wellness Warriors podcast, and congratulations on the body of work that you empower so many others to employ mindfulness in their lives. It's fabulous, and I look forward to a further chat in the future.
Thank you for joining the Wellness Warriors podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you online with us. If you've enjoyed the series, please leave your review, subscribe and follow, and we look forward to sharing many more stories with you in the future.